Well, good morning, everyone. Just so you know, this AMA session will be recorded. My name's Angela Austin. I'm representing National Security Innovation Network here today, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to our Ask Me Anything session. We're here to discuss a critical initiative, the Multi-Domain Range Scheduling Challenge. This is presented by NSIN and in collaboration with the Air Force 56th Range Management Office and the U.S. Army Intelligence Center of Excellence at Fort Huachuca, Arizona. So we're looking to identify solutions for multi-domain range scheduling management and address the pressing need for an integrated system or tool within the DoD. And before we get into the details of the challenge, I just want to share that I'm also, as a representative of NSIN, I'm also a Marine of 24 years, and spending the last few years on active duty and operations, I intimately understand the importance of an efficient range management tool, and just the need for a more relevant tool that streamlines these processes. So I'm super excited about this challenge. And I'm super excited that we can be here today to answer some of your questions. You'll have the opportunity to engage with subject matter experts that we have on the line now from our mission partner side. I'm going to cover the mechanics of this challenge. And then once I get through that, just some of the administrative things, I will turn it over to our mission partner. So as far as the questions go, if you look on the bottom right, there's a little shape button, the activities button, and that's how you're going to submit your questions during this session. I'm going to go through those and read them off, and as we work through, and I'll read through the question and then give you an opportunity to talk and the subject matter experts to answer, but that's how we will queue all the questions in there and work through them that way. And following this session, we will make the recording available on the IdeaScale page on the Q&A forum. So you'll be able to see anything that you might have missed today. And we'll also have a transcript of the questions and the answers. So before we get into more of the details, I wanted to highlight the significance of this challenge. We do have the hybrid pitch day coming in June of this year, and up to $75,000 in awards available to those who are the top performers here. And then also we have the potential access to Vanguard 24 following this coming, which is in September. So with that, I am going to get us through some of these details of the challenge. So this is the timeline that I have up now. And as you know, we're in the solicitation period, so we're open to receive submissions at this point. This period will end on the 23rd of May, and it closes 11:59 Eastern time on that day, just so you're aware. You have until then. If you experience any technical issues or anything like that, please reach out on IdeaScale, or even easier, you can reach out to Megan or I at the NSIN challenges, challenges@nsin.mil. Megan, can you please put that in the chat box for them? So anytime you experience an issue, or if you have any questions that don't get resolved here, that's the email address that you can go to, and that's Megan and I fielding those emails. Also, so once we get through the submissions on June 6th, that's when the deliberations will be complete, and we will announce who the finalists are that will be invited to pitch. We will have the week of, June 18th is the pitch rehearsal, and then just a couple days later is the hybrid pitch event. And just to give you a better idea of the hybrid pitch event, that means you have the opportunity to attend virtually or in person. It will be in Phoenix, Arizona at the Mission Acceleration Center there. Let's see. So following that event on July 3rd is when we will announce the winners. And then again, the Vanguard event is in September. As far as the pitch deck submission, these are the requirements listed here. They're also posted on IdeaScale. And it's just pretty typical formatting, PDF file, maximum of 10 slides. That would include your title slide and total 10 slides. This is the scoring criteria. Again, this is posted on the campaign page in Idea Scale. And this is pretty self-explanatory. These are the 6 different criteria, though, that you will be scored on. So just keep in mind, this is where your rating comes from. And for the pitch day, I already kind of mentioned it. So we've got the Southwest Mission Acceleration Center hosting us there. It's on June 20th. The presentation will be pre-recorded with our production company, and then it will be 5 minutes long, followed by 5 minutes of Q&A from subject matter experts who are participating in the capacity of judges. They'll be scoring live, and then we'll roll into the next company. So that's how we work through it. And then in that case, the evaluation criteria is also the same as what we have listed for the first initial down select. So nothing changes there. Okay. I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Lieutenant Colonel Adam Forrest. He is here from the mission partner side, and he's going to talk to you in more detail about some of the technical things with this challenge. Please go ahead, sir.
All right, thank you, Angela. Appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. I'm Adam Forrest. I am the operations officer, or the G3 here at Fort Huachuca. My job mainly entails working with the United States Army Intelligence Center of Excellence, but I also work with the installation and range control and range operations here on Fort Huachuca. And so I think you can see the problem statement here on the slide in front of you, but this is something that's been pretty near and dear to our heart for the last year or so, maybe even 2 years, as we have built out several different training exercises, experiments, and tests that we've done here in Arizona. But the idea really comes from, maybe like a Southwest Range complex where we have the opportunity to find a way to link several different installations and joint partners in a way that we really don't have available to us right now. And so the thought here is that what we are trying to create is a tool that really enables us to share information and data, to maybe even reserve ranges, reserve different resources and facilities across the Southwest, across joint partners, across multiple different areas of operation, simply and efficiently, and have everybody be able to see that data real time and be able to pull it up in a very simple way, right? I'm a pretty simple person. I'm not very good with technology, and the idea of us being able to pull something like this up on our phones and be able to access it on the move and on the go really, really appeals to us. And so we have some tools inside of the Army, inside of the Air Force, the Marines, all of our joint partners. But I would say that those tools are relatively cumbersome. And what we're looking for is something that the ease of use just becomes, I guess, intuitive in a sense, and is easy for just about any soldier to pick up and run with and understand how to operate. And so that to me is the best way I can describe what we're looking for. Again, I'm pretty simple, and so I have a whole range of experts here in the room with me, and I'm going to introduce them really quickly, just so that you know who's in the room and online with us and available to help answer questions. So down here on my right, I have Mr. Mark Farrar, Mr. Jason Palm, both just a wealth of knowledge in the aviation community. They both work in my operations section as the G3 Air. So they can answer anything from an air standpoint, but they also just have an extreme number of years between them. They're pretty old. And can answer a lot of other questions for us too, outside of it, just the air domain. On my left here, I have Mr. John Burnett, and he has just a very wide range of expertise, and has really been our multi-domain operations expert here on Fort Huachuca for the last couple of years, helping us to build out what we call, kind of a MDO or multi-domain operations range of sorts. And as we start talking about Vanguard and some of the exercises and testing and experimentation that we've done, he holds just a ton of expertise in that department and can answer any questions, from multiple aspects, I guess. And then just right here, directly to my left, is Mr. Mike Shuford. So he works for range control. He runs range control on Fort Huachuca. He's an operations specialist and knows way more about ranges than I will ever know, and can answer just about anything from a range facility standpoint. And then behind me and to my right and helping to mute me and really keep me in check is my deputy, Alan Kiefer. Major Alan Kiefer, sorry, and he's a lot smarter than me and pretty much runs the operations section for us here on Fort Huachuca. I'm just the pretty face, and so that's us. Online, I have Mr. Steve Payton. He's our Spectrum manager. Incredible wealth of knowledge when it comes to Spectrum and operations, and so I'm certainly happy to have him on board with us. And then at some point, you may see Mr. Pete Don dial in. He's back east at a conference right now, and so he's trying to get on. That's our big boss and who's really directing everything here. So if you see his name pop up, or if he comes online, that's who's talking, and he's really probably the smartest one out of all of us. I'm really saying that just to get a good grade on my evaluation. But that's all I've got, Angela. And so I think at this point, we're going to open it up to questions, and we can start, if anyone would like, they can start putting questions into the Q&A section, I think under the applications there, and I'll stand by to answer whatever we've got.
Thank you, sir. We don't have any questions in there yet. So please feel free to use that activities button to enter all of your questions. Let's see.
There's a question in the chat, Angela. I can put it over into the Q&A.
Okay, sure. Let me go to the chat. Is there a presentation template? And I assume you're talking about for the pitch deck deliverable, Alex? We do not have a presentation deck template to use. We just ask that you create whatever works for you and your company. Okay, we just received another one. Is working software required by the pitch day, or is it simply a pitch deck? So I'll turn that one over to you, sir, if you're looking for something that is already prepared and ready to go, or more in theory.
No problem. Hey, I see it more as a pitch deck. I see it as an opportunity for you to tell us what you can do, what you can provide, and not have a completed product ready, that where you're going to just show us the software, but really just a great explanation of how it would work and what that looks like and what your capabilities are.
Okay, thank you, sir. The next question is, what does the application format and content requirement due May 23rd? So you'll need to register an idea scale if you haven't already done so. And when you go to submit an idea, there's a form that you will fill out asking for basic information, technical abstract, which please take into account that it also mentions there, but that is public facing. So you don't want to go into too much detail there, just an overview of your proposed solution. And then you'll attach your pitch deck in there, and it will ask you a number of other questions, your SAM UEID and things like that. So you can find all of that in idea scale. Let's see. Okay, next question. What would you say is the biggest challenge that has stalled progress for range operations? I will turn that one over to you, sir.
All right, so we just had a very brief discussion here, but so I'm gonna turn it over and maybe ask Mike in just a second to say something, and then maybe Mark as well. But so from my perspective and from a range user, right, what we have is in the Army is something called the Range Facility Support Management System. We shorten that to RFMS because we have to give everything an acronym. But it is very cumbersome. It is not easy to use. It takes a long time to just plug something into RFMS, and even then you don't know if someone's going to read it or use it, or if it's going to get through. And then that's just kind of one facet of the problem, right? Is it doesn't incorporate all the things I needed to incorporate. So I still have to reach out to Mike at Range Control. I still have to reach out to John Burnett if I want to use something else on the range. If I want to put a different resource on the range, or I want to put an emitter out, or I want to put a target out. And so there's so much more work that has to be done. And I think what I'm going to ask Mark to kind of describe, he's got a pretty good analogy here of kind of a menu of options, right? What we see here is, this is maybe like going to a restaurant and ordering, as a group and ordering food. And so, I'll ask them to talk about it. But the other problem with RFMS is it doesn't span across more than just the Army. So it's just Fort Huachuca, right? If the Air Force wanted to come and use our range here at Fort Huachuca, which they do actually, and they use our airfield all the time, and they come and use the facilities here, well, they don't have access to that. So they're working outside of the system that we have in place. Same thing would work across from us to them, right? We don't have access to their systems. And so they're not cross domain and cross leveling inside of the joint, sphere of operations. And so, Mark, do you want to just describe what you were talking about with, maybe a menu of operations that we see, and then Mike, if you want to just take what you think from your experience.
Okay, thank you, sir. Hey, good morning. So I guess the issue that we see here is, even operating internally to Fort Huachuca, we really have three primary domains that we operate in: air, ground, and spectrum. And in order to coordinate those three things in a multi-domain operation environment, we have to have a meeting, because we don't have a system whereby we can do one-stop shopping and be able to say, oh, I can see what's happening on the ground, I can see what's happening in the air, and I can see what's happening in the spectrum at any one given time and any one given location. And then if you expand that out to what the other services are doing, or the other installations are doing, we don't have the ability to look and see, hey, what's Chaz got planned for the Tombstone MOA for flight in there on any given date or time, and how do we coordinate or deconflict, because we have to go into a totally different system. So I guess metaphorically speaking, I see it as a boss was stating a moment ago, I see it as we're sort of all going to a restaurant ordering food, but then we can put the food on a Lazy Susan and eat family style, where we just slide the Lazy Susan around. We have access to whatever anybody else ordered. And I said that for you, Grizz, because you look hungry. So that's really sort of my metaphor for what we're looking for.
Thanks, Mark. Mike, any thoughts on what you think is maybe the biggest challenge?
So I think one of the biggest challenges, and Mark hit on it, but so right now, range uses RFMS. The airfield uses something different. We could put the air stuff in RFMS, but that requires the use of two systems in, because the airfield is using a system. a graphic representation of what's going on the ground, what airspace is hot, what ranges are hot, what training areas are occupied, but also adding now spectrum, since we're doing more of the multi-domain and doing EW things, to have a graphic representation of everything that's going on, so we could have in our sync center, have it up on the screen so anybody can come in and look and get a briefing on what is currently going on, but also for my fire desk operators at range to understand what's going on in the whole space and not just what's going on the ground. I think that's one of our biggest issues.
Hopefully that helps answer the question.
Great, thank you. I will move along to our next question from Adam Welch. What programs of record are currently being used for scheduling and or tracking of range activities? Is any proposed solution required to use APIs with any existing programs?
So the programs of record right now, again, are the Range Facility Management Support System, or RFMS, and that's what we are mandated to use in the Army. So every range operations in the Army uses RFMS. There's getting ready to be a new program of record coming out. They are still in testing phase, I think, of that software, and that's called ATIS. Don't give me the line what that acronym means, but that is the newest system, but it's not going to be what we're looking for here, because again, it's just going to be an Army system. And it requires a CAC. So you have to have credentials in order to access that. And I'm not sure about APIs.
I don't think there's a requirement, no, to use APIs with any existing programs.
Okay. Thank you. Next
Angela.
question.
Angela,
Oh.
this is Chad. Can I speak a little bit for the RMO?
Yes, please, go ahead.
All right, I'd just like to piggyback on what Colonel Forrest said. You know, we are definitely, all of us here in this region are looking for a common operating picture from a scheduling standpoint. But not to restate everything he said, when he talks about a menu at a restaurant, think about scheduling resources. So airspace is a resource, a thread is a resource, a spectrum frequency is a resource. And then having something that you can pull that menu down, see if it's being used or not. And if you grab it, and then somebody else tries to grab it, it has the ability to show you that there's a conflict there. Sooner or later, well, the software can be pretty smart. Eventually, the human will probably have to look at it to see how do we deconflict all that and spread things out. I will say here, you know, in Colonel Forrest and Fort Huachuca team, you know, already mentioned this, that they're using RFMS somewhat in a vacuum. The Marine Corps on the west side of Phoenix or Arizona does the same thing. On the Air Force side, we use a system called Center Scheduling Enterprise. It's not bad, but it's not used to the capability that it was designed. And it takes a lot of human interface to put that scheduling puzzle together. And the problem with us right now is, while on the Air Force side, we can see somebody else's schedule pretty easily, it's not as, it's still a cumbersome process. And so that's what we're trying to do is make it a lot easier for all of us, and start working instead of in little stovepipes, working more reasonably and together. And that's the bigger picture of what we're looking for. Back to you. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So the next question is commercial applicability a strict requirement? And I'll kind of start this one. So the commercial part is from the NSIN side, because part of our mission is to help early to mid-stage ventures pivot to dual use and to the DoD. So just like anything else in the criteria, it's part of your overall score and how you will be selected. It's not a strict requirement such as the required features or the required technical features that are listed. So it's not like that. It's just something that, when we collaborate and in partnership execute this challenge, that's one of our goals in my organization. So we look to help accomplish that mission in these challenges. So no, it's not a strict requirement, but hopefully that helps you understand it a little bit better. Did you want to add anything to that, Lieutenant Colonel Forrest?
No, ma'am, I think you covered it. That was great.
Okay, next question. Do you expect the final solution to be hosted in an aisle 5 or higher location? Similarly, will the solution be required to have ATO on multiple service networks?
So, okay, so I think I understand aisle 5 to be an unclassified system. And then, so yes, I guess we would like it to, so to me, I think this is something that primarily needs to be on an unclassified system so that everyone has easy access and it doesn't require us to move into a secure facility to have to operate. And then, will the solution be required to have authority to operate on multiple service networks? I think the answer is yes to that. And I'm not sure how we get to that, but yeah, that is what we're looking for. And I should have probably said this from the beginning, but Chaz, anytime you would like to step in and provide some context or an answer here, please feel free to do so. You sound far more articulate than I do.
Okay. I'll move along to the next question. Will lower bandwidth solutions be considered? For example, a 2 kilobyte per minute solution to provide essential COP data to distributed forces operating in austere areas.
So, yeah, I think that's a great question, actually, and I think the answer is yes. I can tell you we have bandwidth issues at Fort Huachuca right now, and so and maybe we are an austere area, but I totally understand what you're getting at with that, and I think yes is the right answer. But maybe I'll turn it over here to John, to give his thoughts on this too. But I think from my perspective, right, the ability to kind of, and I think you're describing it inside the question, but to be able to have both as an option, right? So like to go down to a low bandwidth solution when you need to, but then to also be able to operate just at home station where we have a little better capabilities. I don't know, John, what do you think from your perspective?
Yeah. In consideration, several of the collective training events that we had and access to
You're cutting out a little bit over there. We can't hear you.
of constructive and simulated wrap for an exercise. Yeah, I think it's definitely something that'd be essential.
Yeah, I think if this gets built with different layers on it, that the sort of wave top capability is able to function with low bandwidth. And then as we need to dig deeper, certainly that requires more data and potentially more flow of data. So I would say wave top certainly, so everybody could have access to the minimum things, but to be able to bore in deeper is going to take more bandwidth.
And I would say, you take into account, and I'm gonna throw off some Army ranges that, are actually have some lack of connectivity, like PTA in Hawaii. Very, very little connectivity. There are places here on Fort Huachuca, Pinyon Canyon, at Fort Carson, Yakima Training Center. I mean, sure, there are places where the training audience and the range control can actually, has significant bandwidth, but there are, in all those locations, there's similar lack of access. I mean, even here, we have an issue with fiber. And so, as we're trying to expand out our MDO range complex infrastructure, we don't have the ability right now to push fiber. So we end up having to place physical instances. And I'll use like IWTPT, which is our simulation for a training event. They have to actually take a server stack out to the command post, but then we can't even nest. We would, right as it exists now, we wouldn't be able to nest that back to say a sync center of sorts to be able to see how the simulation is supporting the training event.
Yeah, and I think since even right now, we're in the process of producing a draft MDO range guide for use by all camps, posts, and installations. That, like John said, many of those places, some of those places will be instrumented. We'll use white sands, for instance. Almost everything they do, you can see via sensors they have on their installation. That is not the case for most home station training. They'll have a chunk of real estate, a chunk of range on the ground that will have little, if any, instrumentation, and therefore virtually no bandwidth. And their ability to utilize this tool will be critical in coordinating that without much bandwidth, if any.
And of course, we have some places that are considered austere areas that have a lot of access to connectivity. I use the National Training Center. There's nothing more austere than the Mojave Desert, but that's a place that has the right access to the right lines to be able to instrument anything across the entire training area. I'll also use this as an opportunity to go back to probably one of our first questions that we had too as well when we talk air, land, and spectrum. I would also add in there cyber and space also as components and kind of buckets that we would need to be prepared to manage as we build out our system. Both cyber and space are becoming a demand all the way down to the company level across multiple levels of collective training, and in many regards sometimes it's difficult to coordinate effectively because if you don't have the right pipelines, you're going to miss out, especially with space. It takes somewhere about a year to be able to coordinate some of the space ranges.
Hey, yeah, thanks, guys. So I'll just offer up to as we kind of just threw a bunch of stuff at you there. If we are saying anything that doesn't make sense to you, or if we are using an acronym that you don't understand, or you just need clarity somewhere, please don't hesitate to speak up and ask. Sometimes we get caught up in just yammering on and using Army speak, and it doesn't make sense to people. And so please feel free.
Great, thanks. See, next question. Is the G6 or service equivalent currently engaged in this challenge to address security and compliance requirements?
So go ahead.
I can take that. Yeah. So I think it's very unique to each individual installation. There are some areas where they have synergy when it comes to compliance. And for the most part, most capability cannot operate on an Army range without having a JF-12 number assigned to it. So it's actually gone through its compliance. Although in many regards, a lot of the stuff that we're seeing, especially as we get into multi-domain collective training, we're seeing requests for authorities to experiment or test, which are, bringing out capability that does not have an improved JF-12 number and it has not gone through compliance. And then that creates another level of requirements for requesting approvals.
I don't know that G6 is currently involved, but I think
Yeah.
for this software, I think they definitely should.
Yeah, so we will certainly rope them in here as we move a little further along in the process, but in terms of the ideological and, just kind of theoretical, idea making that's gone on so far, that's not something we've brought them into, but they will be eventually.
I would think DITSA would also get involved.
Yeah.
As we start talking, bringing another infrastructure onto government networks, you're gonna have DITSA get involved with the compliance requirement.
So just to dogpile on that a little bit, from the air standpoint, certainly we're all watching the news and seeing what's occurring with unmanned aircraft, in particular with small aircraft. And so as we do continue to do, and probably we'll see even more in the future, the proliferation of smalls, those systems that are coming at the speed of technology, shall we say, are almost without exception not approved for flight in either restricted airspace or over federal installations. So there are permissions involved in that as well. And those things become very cumbersome, but they are still requirements. So our ability to see that and track those things will be some of that sort of deep dive I was talking about with regard to bandwidth earlier.
Great, thank you. I will move on to our next question. Is Cloud One the expected location for hosting data? Is there government funding earmarked for that?
So I'll be honest, I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that that's the case, that it would, that we have any expectation. If there's something better out there that someone else has, we're open to anything. And again, I'm just kind of a big dumb animal here. And so I just don't know what I don't know in that environment, I guess. And then I would say from a funding perspective, potentially yes, right? That we just have to, the funding is certainly going to be a part of this. And so obviously, the government wants to, go with the cheapest, option that accomplishes, all of the, the tasks that we're looking to accomplish. And so there's a balance there in terms of what we're willing to spend on versus, the capability that we'll get out of it. And so that'll have to be something that we take into account for sure.
Thank you, sir. I'll move on to the next one. Are you open to existing commercial products configured, extended specifically to meet your range scheduling needs?
I think the answer is yes. If there's something out there that already works and we can plug in the right data and get the right outputs, then absolutely. I would imagine that if there's something that already exists and it's not, it doesn't have to be created from scratch, that there's the potential that it's less expensive to start with as well. So, but I don't know. And so I think, yes, we're definitely open to whatever is available and out there already as an option.
Thank you. Do you anticipate TRMC involvement or funding in the project?
Can you elaborate on TRMC? I'm sorry that I don't know what that is.
This was from Anonymous, so if you want to put it in the chat or just raise your hand, either way, let us know what TRMC means.
I don't anticipate that, if it's who I think we're talking about. But if there's someone else we need to bring in, we would certainly be amenable to it. But as of right now, I've not had any contact with the Test Resources Management Office.
Okay. All right, I don't see any other questions there. So are there any clarifications on any of the acronyms like Lieutenant Colonel Forrest mentioned, or anything that needs clarifying at this point? Please feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat or the questions tool. And while we're waiting, from our subject matter experts team, is there anything that you want to elaborate on while we have a break in questions?
I was
Yeah,
wondering if,
Go ahead, go ahead. Sorry.
no, just really quickly, do you guys want to elaborate a little bit on Vanguard, what it is, what the expectations are, what the value is, for somebody to be able to come and demonstrate their technology there?
Sure.
Thanks,
I'll
Sammy.
hand it. Yeah, I think that's a great point, Sam. And so, John, you want to give just a quick rundown of Vanguard and how that works?
Sure. So Vanguard is our annual kind of industry experimentation. It's also tied to a collective training event. We normally look for a focus. This is the third Vanguard that we've done. Our first one kind of focused on threat STEM simulation or threat emitters. The second one brought in a combination of threat emitters and started looking at sensors, specifically some of our programs of record that we're currently building. The upcoming Vanguard in September, it'll take place almost throughout the entire week, the entire month of September, with the first week really focusing on a lot on experimentation and building out our threat systems management office test bed and giving industry an opportunity to get into anechoic chambers and be able to test their capabilities in kind of a laboratory type environment. And then the second week is a collective training event that focuses on an INDOPACOM threat model and incorporates both Fort Huachuca, Plias Training Center, and White Sands, trying to replicate the tyranny of distance, which is, the INDOPACOM's theater operations. But we have some a little short of 50 mission partners across industry and program of record offices. The primary training audience is the 3rd Multi-Domain Task Force. It will include USAICoE providing a couple of teams with some really interesting technology. And 11th Cyber Warfare Battalion, 7th Australian Signal Regiment, and a couple of other smaller mission partners. But the main focus for Vanguard this year is looking at over the horizon sensing and targeting. So yep, it is a really great place to come and have an opportunity to look and see what we're building and how we're trying to get after some of the hard problems that impacts the joint forces, and some solutions both for threat STEM simulation as well as deep sensing.
Chaz, did you have something you wanted to go in more detail on?
Well, I just wanted to say that, during the course of the conversation, we started going down some pretty, not detailed, but potential to get detailed rabbit holes, for lack of a better term. As we get into our business of scheduling resources, whatever that may be, there's obviously a lot of business rules behind each one of those. I'll use the small UAS for an example. The fact that it may or may not have a JF-12 behind it is good info to know from a scheduling standpoint, but that getting that JF-12, getting that everything else is really kind of outside, in my opinion, outside of this particular effort. But as we look at the next iteration and what you all think might fit for what we're looking for, it's certainly going to be big picture, and it'll be iterations of kind of narrowing down the scope and expanding the scope at the same time in terms of what we want. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you, Chaz. We have another question. What is the anticipated source of funding for maturing, deploying the winning selected solutions that come out of this challenge? I wanted to add something here, and then I can turn it over to you, Lieutenant Colonel Forrest. So as the part of our prize challenge is to meet the competitive process requirements to enable potential for sole source selection following the challenge. Of course, there's a lot of variables there because the contracting officer needs to have it meet their requirements. And of course, there needs to be a pathway identified for that within the organization. So basically, we set up our challenge in order to meet that requirement as best we can, and have the legal language included in there to allow for sole source if the organization that we're working with or any within the DoD chooses to move forward and in any follow-on actions. So in this case, we do not have a solidified pathway for follow-on activities, but I will turn it over to you, Lieutenant Colonel Forrest, if you wanted to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, that was great. In terms of, the actual source of the funding, if we're talking about where the money's going to come from, I don't think it's going to come from Installation Management Command, unfortunately, in this case, although we are going to, try to lobby for the installation to help with some of it. But I think, for USAICoE, for the United States Army Intelligence Center of Excellence, we work for TRADOC, and so the Training and Doctrine Command is probably where the funding is coming out of in this case. But yeah, it's a little hard to say.
Okay, thank you, sir. Do we have any other questions or comments? Please feel free to raise your hand. I don't see anything else in the question box. I don't see anything. Sir, was there anything else you wanted to add? Go into more detail on?
I think we've covered just about everything from our perspective that we wanted to, and there were some great questions that that helped us kind of dig a little deeper into what the problem set is and what we are trying to accomplish. And so I'm just really thankful for everyone's participation and really thankful for all the questions, and excited to see what comes out of this. But I don't have anything else from our stance, unless anyone else has any final questions or thoughts from here. I'll just turn it over really quick to anyone in the room here with me, though. And anybody have anything that you'd like to add? One final thing. Ellen, anything? Oh man, infantryman, a lot to say. That's all we got from our side, Angie.
Thank you, sir. And I just want to also mention that as part of the eligibility for this challenge, you do need to have an active registration in SAM.gov. And then part of that is having a cage code, because when we award the prize challenge money, we will need a cage code in order to transfer the money and award you. So please keep that in mind. There's plenty of time to still get an active registration. We see people do it in a matter of 2 weeks. Of course, the process can be delayed. So I would say if you haven't started that process, please start today. You can go to sam.gov and there's instructions there. And again, reach out to NSIN@challenges.mil if you have any questions, and we can give you a little bit more information on that. I don't see any other questions. Let me just check the chat box. Where is the idea submission button link on the NSIN website? We have a challenge event page. Megan, can you share it in the chat? Which ultimately everything is going to lead you to idea scale, where you will actually submit your idea, and you'll register first, and then you can submit your idea on the campaign page and idea scale for this challenge.
If you go to ensign.mil and then you tab down to events, you will see this challenge listed. And you scroll a little bit further down, and then there's a submit here button.
Thank you, Sammy.
Yeah, make sure you go
Megan
to the events page, not the challenge program page. Events.
And Megan just added it in the comments. Thank you, Megan.
Yes, the Idea Scale campaign page where you'll apply and submit is also pinned, as well as the NSIN event page and our challenges email address, should you run into any issues.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. Last call. Do we have any other questions before we go? Okay, I don't see anything. Well, in closing, I just want to say thank you all for making the time to come. I think we had a great discussion, and again, we'll get this recording and the transcript of the questions and answers up in Idea Scale, usually within a week following this event. So you can look for that there, and please feel free to reach out to us with any additional questions that didn't get answered here, if anything comes up. So thank you all again. Thanks to our team of subject matter experts, Chaz, Lieutenant Colonel Forrest, and team. I appreciate your expertise and your ability to make yourself available for this. I think we had a great conversation. So thanks again, everyone.